Hey everybody, I'd like to share with you some testing I've been doing with milling my grain. I've recently moved to a different setup that allows me to use my cordless drill. You can see it there, it's mounted on the platform, and I use a little clamp I bought at good old Harbor Freight, and this allows me to mill hands-free. And I'm going to be doing some testing here that kind of has different speeds of the drill, different mill gap settings as well. The key to being able to change the speed of the drill is with this tri-clamp over the trigger. I can adjust that screw right there real finitely and then change the speeds. I'm going to put a little piece of tape here on the drill, and that allowed me to count revolutions as they go. The speed is 46 RPM. This one is 180 RPM. And then full blast, the drill says it's 500 RPM. So these are the three speeds we're going to be using. Now the way I'm going to repeat the speeds is to actually record the drill at that speed. So this is the 180 speed. Play it back, you notice there's a pitch. So I'm going to match that pitch. Wind up here. Here we go. Not exact, but the best we can do in a homebrew type situation. Alright, for these tests I'm going to use about 6 ounces of grain. I'm going to run through the mill. So measure this out real quick. Next thing is the gap on the mill. We're going to use 2 different gap sizes. First one is going to be 0.028. So you're measuring it there with the micrometer. And then the second one will be 0.042. This is our first test. This is the drill running at 46 RPM. You can see this is a pretty slow speed for this drill, and kind of the purpose of these tests is just to see difference in the crush from going rather slow all the way up to 500 RPM. You can see this is taking a little while. I think milling gets overlooked a little bit in the homebrewing world. We all kind of know slower is better, but we might not have the equipment or capabilities to run a drill very slow or anything that's out of just normal operation. So I thought it'd be worthwhile to explore this with a series of tests. Here's the first batch down in the bucket. I'll have some other shots that are more close up later on in the video. Here's our second speed. You can see the higher RPM really makes a difference in how quickly it chews through it. And here's our fastest speed. It's going to be 500 RPM. And pretty much mowing right through it. Okay, next I'm going to grain condition the next 3 examples. That just means putting some water on the kernels before you put them in there, and you'll see it makes a pretty big difference. appears it's a lot more difficult for the drill to grind through there. It's taking a lot longer than the first time. And I think I actually had an issue with the RPMs being a little slow on this, so I had to speed them up just a hair to get the drill going again. There we go. A little bit of moisture on the kernels really kind of puffs them up a bit. Low RPMs, it's kind of difficult. More experimentation is needed, I think. There we go. You can see quite a different crush. And here's our second speed. And the fast speed. Okay, next we're going to a wider gap setting. 0.042, back at the slow RPM setting. And this is unconditioned. See, the slower RPM really takes a longer time to get through the grain. See how that impacts the crush. You can look at the examples later on. Here's our mid-level speed. Our fastest speed, and I think I had an issue with the chuck holding on to the grain mill. I just grab it a little bit there and tighten it, then there it catches, and it goes through there quickly at 500 RPM. Okay, we're going to go back to conditioning at the wider mill gap. Starting off with the slow RPM. It's chugging along, but it's definitely having to work hard. Turn the RPMs up a little bit. Get it started again. There we go. You can see there's a lot more husk material left around when the grain is conditioned. And sorry, once again, this is slipping in the chuck. There it goes. And you can really see the husks are way more intact compared to when the grain is not conditioned. And here's our fast speed. Blowing right through it. So what does all this mean? Put all the grain in mason jars and labeled them, and then put them out here in some nice lighting, and we're going to dissect them. I'm really eager to hear anybody else's input in the comment section or on forums, just so we can really get to the bottom of them, what might be best for any of our systems, best approach to use. One thing I'm noticing is the unconditioned grain really shows a lot of white. See a lot of starch, where the conditioned grain really shows mainly a lot of husk. Husks are kept intact, and I'm eager to see how that plays out at the mash stage. Also noticed here at the faster RPM settings, it seems like the starch is broken into maybe a little smaller pieces. Here's our first look at the conditioned grain. You can see things look like they're pretty much intact, but just cracked rather than kind of torn apart and broken. It'll be interesting to compare the slow, medium, and fast speed, just to see how much it makes a difference. Obviously, we all want to mill quickly and get on with our business, not have to overstress our tools. Low RPMs is a little more challenging. Now we're back to unconditioned grain. This is at a wider gap setting. And you can see the husks are a little more intact at this wider setting. But once again, we see the little bits of starch outlying around. There's the fastest setting, and actually I can see a few kernels that weren't cracked open. That's the risk when you increase the gap size. You might have some slip through that do not get opened up. That might be a function of my mill. It's a nice mill, but it's not the most expensive one around. It's a serial killer. All right, here's our conditioned grain at the 42.042 mill gap. You can see a lot of husks pretty much intact there. It's quite different from the unconditioned tight mill gap setting. There's the mid-level. I'm going to do a second part to this video where I'm going to mash with 4 of these different crushes and take all the measurements along the way, and just to see which one performs the best, what different attributes they have, clarity, all kinds of things like that. And here's our 500 RPM. Yeah, I can see a lot of kernels in there that look like they're not really cracked open. Now we're just going to do a few quick side-by-side comparisons. These are the 2 unconditioned extreme speeds, slowest versus the fastest. This is the slowest unconditioned, smallest mill gap, to the slowest condition at the same mill gap. This is the slowest at the tightest mill gap compared to slowest with the wide mill gap. And then the slowest with the tightest mill gap, unconditioned, to slowest conditioned with the wider mill gap. Great, hope you found this video helpful and entertaining.